The battlefield in space had turned into a graveyard. Pieces of broken ships floated silently, turning slowly in the endless dark. Fires still burned in some of the wreckage, but there was no sound in space, only the cold silence of loss. Somewhere, in that field of destruction, a small refugee vessel drifted. It was old, damaged, and barely working. Inside, dozens of survivors waited, their eyes filled with fear. Among them was Lyra, an alien woman with pale silver skin and dark, worried eyes. She held her newborn baby tightly in her arms. The baby was small, fragile, and wrapped in a thin cloth. His tiny lungs released a cry that echoed inside the vessel's narrow halls. The sound was sharp, almost painful, because of the silence surrounding it. At first, some of the refugees only turned their heads, but soon whispers began to rise. Their whispers carried fear, frustration, and desperation. "The child will give us away," one muttered. "If the enemy patrols here, they will find us," another said. "We survived the battle, but we won't survive this." Lyra pressed the baby closer to her chest, trying to calm him, rocking gently. But the infant's cries only grew louder. Her hands trembled as guilt filled her heart. She knew the others were right. Sound, even a child's cry, could betray their location. The battlefield was not empty. Enemy scanners and raiding ships still moved through the wreckage, searching for survivors. One mistake, one sound too loud, could mean discovery. The pressure on her grew heavier with every passing moment. Some of the refugees looked at her not with sympathy but with resentment. Fear made their faces hard. One alien man stepped closer, his voice low but urgent. "You must silence the baby," he whispered. "For all our lives. For the good of everyone." Lyra shook her head, clutching the infant tighter. "He is only a child. I will not harm him." "You think the enemy will spare him?" another voice snapped. "If they find us, none of us will live. Not you, not him." Tears welled in Lyra's eyes. She looked down at the crying baby, helpless and innocent, and her heart broke. She wanted to protect him, but fear for the group pressed against her soul. Her people had always believed survival came first and sacrifice was sometimes necessary. But this was her child. Could she truly make that choice? Just then, a figure stepped forward from the shadows of the corridor. He was not one of them. He was human. Captain Elias Kane, a soldier assigned by the human fleet to guard and guide the refugees, had been standing near the doorway. His presence was quiet but firm, like a watchful guardian. His armor was scratched, his face tired, but his eyes were sharp and calm. When he heard the refugees demanding silence, he moved closer, his boots echoing against the metal floor. All eyes turned to him. The aliens waited, expecting him to agree with them. After all, he was a soldier, a man of war, someone who understood survival. Surely he would order the mother to silence the child. Instead, Elias knelt slowly in front of Lyra. His voice was calm, steady, almost gentle. "May I hold him?" he asked. Lyra blinked in surprise. She hesitated. This human was a warrior, a stranger. But something in his voice, soft, warm, unlike the harsh tones around her, made her hands loosen. Carefully, she placed the crying baby in his arms. Elias held the infant with practiced ease. His large, calloused hands looked strangely careful as they supported the tiny body. He rocked slightly, whispering low words the others could not understand. Slowly, as if sensing safety, the baby's cries softened into whimpers, then quieted. The ship fell into silence once more, but now it was a peaceful silence. The refugees stared in disbelief. How could a battle-hardened soldier know how to calm a newborn? Elias looked at them, then at Lyra. "He's not the problem," he said simply. "Fear is." One alien muttered, "You don't understand. Our enemies will find us if he cries." Elias shook his head. "I do understand. I've lived through wars. I've carried children from burning cities. Human babies cry too, loudly, often, sometimes for no reason at all. But we never silence them, because their voices mean life. It means they're still here, and as long as they cry, we fight harder to keep them alive. His words were strange to the refugees. To them, silence meant safety, but to this human soldier, noise meant hope. They exchanged uncertain glances. Elias adjusted the controls on his wrist device, connecting to the ship's systems. A low hum filled the vessel as he rerouted static into the comms, creating a soft background noise. The sound covered any small cry, blending it into the surrounding static. The solution was simple, clever, and harmless. "Now," Elias said, "even if he cries, no enemy scanner will hear. They'll only hear noise." The refugees blinked in surprise. None of them had thought of such a solution. They had only thought of the problem and the sacrifice. Lyra's eyes softened with relief. She reached for her child again, and Elias gently returned him to her arms. The baby stirred but remained calm, his breathing slow. For the first time since the battle, Lyra felt a fragile thread of hope. Elias rested his hand lightly on the mother's shoulder. "Protect him. He's not a burden, he's a reason to survive." The refugees fell silent. Their anger cooled, though doubt still lingered in some eyes. But in that moment, Lyra understood something. Humans were not just fighters. They were protectors. Their strength did not only come from weapons, but from something deeper, the refusal to let innocence be lost. The small ship continued to drift among the wreckage, but the silence inside was no longer heavy with fear. It was filled with something else, something new, the quiet beginning of trust. And for Lyra, holding her child close, the image of a human soldier calming her baby would never fade. It was the moment everything began to change. The refugee ship floated quietly among the endless wreckage. For hours, the survivors had sat in silence, each one carrying the heavy weight of fear. They had escaped the battle, but they were not safe yet. Enemy scouts still searched the field, scanning for survivors. At any moment, their fragile ship could be discovered. In the center of the dim-lit cabin, Lyra sat with her newborn baby resting against her chest. The child had calmed after Captain Elias Kane, the human soldier, had held him. Now he slept softly, his tiny breaths warming the thin cloth around him. Every so often the baby stirred, but Elias had already adjusted the ship's comms to mask the sound. The danger of his crying had lessened. Still, not everyone was convinced. A tall alien man named Veyran stepped forward. His skin shimmered faintly blue in the light, and his eyes glared sharply. "You should not have interfered, human," he said. "That child could cost us all our lives." Elias met his gaze calmly. "And silencing him would have cost something greater." "What could be greater than survival?" Veyran demanded. His voice carried the bitterness of loss. He had already lost family in the war, and his heart was hardened. Elias stood slowly. His broad frame and soldier's armor made him seem imposing, but his voice remained steady, almost quiet. "Survival without humanity means nothing. If we throw away the innocent to save ourselves, what exactly are we surviving for?" The refugees murmured, torn between fear and thought. Some agreed with Elias in their hearts, but were too afraid to speak. Others still believed the baby was a danger. Lyra looked at Elias, hope flickering in her eyes. For the first time since the war began, she felt someone stand between her and despair. But the discussion ended abruptly when the ship's sensors flickered to life. A faint alarm echoed through the cabin. One of the refugees rushed to the console. "Enemy patrol closing in," he whispered, his hands trembling. Everyone froze. The sound of the baby's soft breathing suddenly seemed louder than ever. Fear spread again like cold fire. All eyes turned back to Lyra. Some looked at her child with dread. Elias moved first. He checked the console and studied the readings. "It's only one scout ship. Small. They're scanning wreckage nearby." Veyran hissed. "One scout is enough. If they detect us, more will follow." The refugees began to panic, whispering about hiding, about shutting down power completely. Some whispered again about the baby. Elias raised his voice firmly, cutting through the noise. "Stop. Panic won't save you." The cabin fell silent. All eyes turned to him. He stood straight, his eyes sharp with focus. "Listen to me. Hiding is not enough. If we sit here, they will eventually find us. We need to use what we have. We need to outthink them." The refugees exchanged confused glances. Outthink the enemy? They were civilians. They had no weapons, no real defenses. What could they possibly do? Elias's gaze moved to Lyra and her child. His expression softened slightly, but his voice remained steady. "The baby's cry is not our weakness, it can be our strength." Lyra blinked, confused. "Strength? How?" Elias moved to the console and began tapping commands. "We amplify his cry. We broadcast it through the wreckage. We make them believe survivors are trapped somewhere else. The enemy will follow the sound and will move the other way." The idea was bold, risky, but it was clever. Some refugees gasped. Veyran shook his head sharply. "You would use a newborn as bait?" Elias looked at him directly. "I would. Use courage as bait. The cry of a child is not just a sound, it is a signal of life. And life is worth fighting for. We can turn their own fear against them." For a long moment, no one spoke. The refugees stared at the soldier, weighing fear against hope. Finally, Lyra broke the silence. She looked down at her baby, then back at Elias. Her voice shook, but she nodded. "Do it. I trust you." Elias gave her a small, reassuring nod. "We'll keep him safe. I promise." He quickly set the ship's systems to capture the child's soft sounds. When the baby stirred and let out a cry, Elias adjusted the signal, amplifying it and scattering it through the wreckage using the ship's broken transmitters. Moments later, the enemy scout changed course. On the console, they saw it speeding toward the false signal, leaving their sector behind. Gasps of relief filled the cabin. For the first time, the refugees saw possibility where there had only been fear. Elias didn't smile. His eyes remained focused. It worked this time, but they will send more. We must be ready again. Survival is not about waiting. It's about moving. The refugees listened in silence, realizing that this human was not like any commander they had known. He did not see them as burdens. He saw them as people worth saving. Later, when the danger had passed for the moment, Lyra approached Elias. The baby was sleeping peacefully in her arms again. "You risked everything on his cry," she whispered. "Why?" Elias studied her for a moment. His face was lined with fatigue, but his eyes carried a quiet fire. "Because I know what it means. In my world, when a child cries, it means someone is alive. Someone is fighting to breathe. To me, that sound is not danger. It's hope. It reminds us why we fight wars in the first place." Lyra's eyes softened. "Your people. You are different." Elias shook his head slightly. "Not different. Just stubborn. We don't give up easily, especially not on children." His words sank deep into her heart. She looked down at her baby and realized that for the first time she did not feel alone. But as the ship drifted further through the wreckage, the danger was far from over. More enemy patrols were searching the field. The refugees grew restless, still afraid. Yet something had changed. They no longer looked at the child as a threat. They looked at him as part of their survival, and the reason was simple. A human soldier had chosen life, even when fear demanded sacrifice. That night, while the others rested in uneasy sleep, Lyra sat awake, watching Elias as he quietly checked the systems again and again, making sure everything worked. He did not rest, though his body longed for it. He kept watch, not only as a soldier, but as a protector. Lyra whispered softly, almost to herself, "Perhaps everything truly is changing." Baby stirred in her arms and gave a tiny cry, but this time no one flinched. This time they listened and they felt hope. The refugee ship drifted through the silent sea of broken vessels. For hours, the survivors believed they had escaped notice. But deep inside, None of them truly felt safe. The wreckage around them offered cover, but it also carried danger. Any enemy scan could sweep across their position, and their fragile craft had little power left to resist. Inside the dim cabin, the refugees sat in tense silence. Some whispered quietly, while others stared blankly into the shadows. Fear had made them restless. Lyra held her baby close, rocking gently. The child had been calm for most of the journey, but every now and then, he let out a soft cry. Each time, her heart jumped with worry. Yet she remembered Captain Elias Kane's words. His cry is not weakness, it means life. That thought gave her comfort. Still, comfort was fragile. The silence broke when the ship's sensor panel lit up. A sharp alarm echoed through the narrow hall. Refugees gasped and turned toward the sound. One of them rushed to the console and scanned the readings. His voice cracked as he reported, "Enemy patrol. More than one ship. They're moving this way." A heavy silence followed. Fear spread quickly through the group like a storm. "They've found us," one whispered. "No, not yet," Elias corrected, striding to the console. He studied the readings with sharp eyes. "They're scanning debris, but they're closing in fast. If they come closer, our signal masking won't hold." The refugees began to panic. Some spoke of shutting down the engines completely, others of abandoning ship in escape pods, though everyone knew the pods would never survive in the wreckage, and then, as if the universe wished to test them, the baby stirred in Lyra's arms. His small lungs released a cry, soft at first, then louder, echoing inside the cabin. The reaction was immediate. Several refugees flinched. Fear twisted their faces. One voice rose sharply. "It will give us away. You must silence him." Another added, "If they hear, we're finished." Lyra's arms tightened protectively around her child. "No," she whispered, her voice shaking but firm. The cries grew louder and panic deepened. Whispers turned to arguments. Survival pressed heavily against morality once more. Elias moved quickly, his calm voice cutting through the storm of fear. "Enough!" The voices stopped. All eyes turned to him. He knelt beside Lyra, his gaze steady, his voice softer now. "Let me." Carefully he reached out and Lyra allowed him to hold the baby again. Elias lifted the child against his chest and spoke in a low, soothing tone. His words were simple, almost like a song, and though the baby did not understand, he slowly quieted. The cabin settled, but the fear did not leave. Elias looked at the group. "You see? He is not the enemy. Fear is the enemy." Veyron, the tall alien who had argued before, stepped forward. His eyes burned with anger. "Your calm words won't stop scanners. Your courage won't protect us if they find this ship." Elias met his gaze without flinching. "You're right. Words alone won't save us, but clever actions will." He stood and placed the baby gently back in Lyra's arms. Then he moved to the console, tapping commands with steady fingers. "We don't have weapons, we don't have strength, but we have something else. Brains." We used the child's cry again. The refugees blinked in disbelief. "Again?" someone whispered. Elias nodded firmly. "We amplify it. We scatter it across different points in the wreckage. The patrol will detect life signs in those areas and move to investigate. While they're distracted, we change course slowly, quietly. They'll chase shadows while we escape." The idea was bold, dangerous, but it was the only chance. Veyron shook his head in disbelief. "You're gambling with our lives." Elias looked at him steadily. "Every choice in war is a gamble, but this one gives us a chance. Doing nothing means waiting to be found and destroyed. I choose the gamble." Silence followed. The refugees exchanged uncertain looks. Fear told them to stay still, but hope whispered that the human might be right. Finally, Lyra spoke. Her voice was soft, but it carried weight. "I trust him. He saved my child. He saved all of us once already. Let him try again." Her words touched the others. Slowly, one by one, The refugees nodded. Elias wasted no time. He recorded a sample of the baby's soft cry and programmed the ship's damaged transmitters to send it out in short bursts from different pieces of wreckage nearby. It was risky. If the enemy realized the trick too quickly, they would still be caught. When he activated the signal, the baby's cry echoed faintly through the debris field, scattered in many directions. On the sensors, the enemy patrol shifted course. Their ships turned sharply, moving toward the false signals. Gasps of relief spread through the cabin. "It's working," one whispered. Elias kept his focus. "Not yet. Stay quiet. They're cautious. We move slowly." He guided the ship with steady hands, inching it away from the patrol's path. The vessel groaned as it slid through broken metal, but it held. The enemy ships moved further toward the false cries, scanning empty wreckage. Hope began to grow in the hearts of the refugees. But then, just as they thought they were safe, a warning light flashed red on the console. Elias's eyes narrowed. One of the enemy ships had broken off from the group. It was moving directly toward them, the cabin filled with fear again. "They've found us!" someone cried. Elias shook his head sharply. "Not yet, but they suspect." The baby stirred again, sensing the fear around him. His small cry rose, in the cabin. This time, Elias did not quiet him. He looked at the refugees, his voice strong. "Let him cry. Let them hear." The group stared at him, confused and terrified. Elias's eyes burned with determination. "We won't survive by hiding forever. Sometimes the best way forward is to fight back, not with weapons, but with courage. His cry will be our signal, not to run, but to outsmart them again." He quickly adjusted the systems, amplifying the live cry into a distorted signal. It echoed across multiple frequencies, bouncing through the wreckage, confusing the enemy sensors. The enemy scout ship hesitated, its scanners flickering with false readings. It turned in circles, unable to lock onto the true source. Elias seized the chance. He guided the refugee ship into a dense cluster of debris, where shadows covered them. The enemy scout searched fruitlessly, chasing echoes of a baby's cry across empty wreckage. Finally, after long, tense minutes, the scout turned away, rejoining its patrol. Inside the cabin, silence returned. Refugees exhaled in relief, their bodies trembling with the release of fear. Lyra looked at Elias with wide eyes. "You risked everything again, and it worked." Elias shook his head. "Not everything, just what was worth risking. Fear would have killed us. Trust saved us." For the first time, the refugees began to see him not only as a soldier, but as something greater, a leader who turned danger into opportunity. The baby had quieted again, resting against Lyra. She kissed his forehead, whispering softly, "Your cry saved us." The others, once doubtful, now looked at the child differently. No longer a burden, no longer a threat. Instead, he was a symbol of life, of hope, of survival. And as the small ship drifted onward, hidden among shadows, everyone felt a quiet shift inside them. The war was not over. Danger was still near. But for the first time, they believed survival was possible. All because a human soldier had chosen to believe that even a cry in the darkness could become their light. The refugee ship drifted through the vast debris field, moving slowly but steadily under Elias Kane's careful guidance. Outside, twisted metal and broken hulls of defeated warships floated like silent monuments to destruction. Despite the chaos around them, Elias's focus never wavered. Every sensor reading, every warning signal was another puzzle to solve. Inside the cabin, the refugees watched him work. Lyra sat with her baby cradled close, his tiny hands curling around hers as he slept. Veyron and the others, once doubtful, had become silent observers, unsure whether to trust the human soldier or fear the unknown. The calm did not last. A distant ping from the sensors indicated an enemy vessel closing in. Not a scout, but a larger, more advanced ship. It moved with precision, scanning each shadow, each broken ship with deadly intent. Panic returned, sharp and immediate. "This is it," whispered one refugee. "We're trapped." Elias shook his head. "We're not trapped. We're outnumbered, yes, but we have something they don't expect: imagination." He moved to the console, tapping commands rapidly. "Listen carefully. The baby's cry can guide us again. This time we use it differently. We make them believe survivors are everywhere, spread across the wreckage. While they chase these echoes, we slip through undetected." Lyra's eyes widened. "You're going to use him again?" Elias looked at her calmly. "I'm going to use his life as a shield, yes, but I am also going to protect him with everything I have. His cry is not just a sound, it is a beacon of hope and a tool of survival." The other refugees stared in awe. They had watched the human soldier turn fear into strategy before, but now the stakes were higher. Elias adjusted the ship's systems to broadcast the baby's cry through multiple signals at different points. The sound echoed faintly across the wreckage, bouncing off broken hulls, creating the illusion of life scattered in every direction. Outside, the enemy ship's sensors flickered, chasing the phantom cries. Its engines hummed with effort as it moved toward the false signals, wasting precious time and energy. Elias guided the refugee ship slowly, deliberately, weaving between wreckage. Every move was calculated, every meter critical. He explained to the refugees, "We move in the shadows. We trust the sound of life to confuse them. If we stay calm and coordinated, we will survive." The ship shuddered as it brushed past a floating hull. Sparks flew across the narrow corridors, but Elias maintained control. "Keep your balance," he instructed. "One wrong step and we could be trapped or crushed. Stay together, stay quiet, and follow my lead." The refugees obeyed, holding onto railings, moving carefully. Fear still lingered, but Elias's confidence spread like a quiet light. Suddenly, a warning light flashed bright red. One of the enemy's drones had detected a real life sign: the baby's cry. It moved fast, closing in on their ship. "Hold steady," Elias shouted. He tapped a sequence on the console, activating a decoy. Small drones ejected from their ship, carrying distorted signals of the baby's cry. They drifted outward, drawing the enemy drone away. The refugees watched in awe as the tiny machines worked. The enemy drone followed the decoy, leaving their ship unscathed. Varen finally spoke, voice trembling slightly. You're humans. You think differently. You use courage, not just weapons." Elias nodded without pride. "Courage, quick thinking, and care for life. That is what sets us apart. Fighting is one thing, but protecting the innocent, that is our strength." Lyra's eyes filled with tears. She looked down at her baby and whispered, "You are safe because of him. He saved us again." The ship continued through the debris field. The baby stirred and let out another soft cry. This time, no one panicked. Instead, the refugees felt a strange mix of relief and pride. Life persisted even in the shadow of danger. Hours passed. The patrols gradually moved away, following the decoy signals and chasing illusions. The refugee ship, guided by Elias, moved deeper into the field, avoiding the main enemy paths. But even as the immediate threat passed, Elias knew the real danger was yet to come. A larger enemy fleet was scanning the area, more advanced ships with better sensors, faster engines, and more power. They could not rely solely on deception forever. He gathered the refugees. "Listen carefully," he said. "We've outsmarted scouts, but larger ships are coming. We need to be ready. This is not just about hiding. It's about using what we have, our brains, our courage, and our unity, to survive." Varen hesitated, then nodded. "And the baby?" Elias smiled softly. "He is our symbol. He reminds us why we fight, why we protect, and why we survive." The refugees worked together under his direction. Elias taught them how to adjust the ship's shields, how to monitor sensors for false readings, and how to remain calm under pressure. Every instruction was simple but effective. Slowly, Trust grew. Fear still existed, but it was tempered by hope. And in that hope, the refugees found a strength they had never known. As the ship moved, Elias noticed a narrow passage between two massive debris clusters, a place where the larger enemy ships would be forced to slow down if they tried to pursue. He made a plan. "We go through here," he explained. "They can't follow easily. The passage will protect us, but we must move carefully." The refugees nodded, following his lead. Lyra held her baby, feeling safer than she had in days. The passage was tight. The ship groaned as it navigated between twisted hulls, sparks flying from brushes with metal. Every turn was calculated. Elias gave quiet commands, guiding them with precision. Then, suddenly, a shadow moved ahead. An enemy drone had detected the ship. It hovered silently, scanning. Elias didn't panic. He whispered instructions. "Stay calm. Let me handle this." He adjusted the ship's energy output, creating a small distortion in the signals. The drone's sensors flickered, confused. It searched for minutes before drifting away, unable to find the source. The refugees exhaled in relief. Veyron shook his head, muttering, "I have never seen anything like this. Humans are something else." Elias gave a small, tired smile. "We adapt, we survive, and we protect life along the way. That is what makes us strong." Finally, the ship emerged from the narrow passage. They were deeper in the debris field, safer than before. The baby stirred again, stretching tiny limbs, unaware of the danger he had just survived. Lyra kissed his forehead. "You are the bravest little one," she whispered. "You remind us all that life is worth protecting." The other refugees, once doubtful, now looked at the child with respect. No longer a burden, no longer a risk. Instead, he was a symbol of their survival, of hope, and of the courage that humans had shown them. Elias leaned back against the console, exhausted but satisfied. "We're not completely safe yet," he said, voice calm but firm. "But we've changed our story. We've turned fear into strength. That's something the enemy cannot take from us." The cabin fell into quiet. The baby cooed softly, drifting back to sleep. Lyra held him close, her heart lighter than it had been in days. For the first time, everyone aboard felt something powerful, an understanding that survival was not just about hiding or fighting. It was about courage, creativity, and protecting what mattered most. And in that moment, among the wreckage of countless battles, the refugees realized the truth. Sometimes, even a tiny cry in the dark can become the turning point. Elias glanced at Lyra and her child. "We've survived today," he said softly. "Tomorrow we survive again. And the day after, because we don't give up. That is what humans do." For the refugees, those words were more than comfort. They were a promise. And as the small ship drifted onward through the broken battlefield, hope shone brighter than fear ever could. The refugee ship floated quietly now, deeper in the debris field than ever before. Outside, twisted metal glinted faintly in the distant starlight, and drifting wrecks moved slowly like silent ghosts. The immediate danger from the enemy scouts and patrols had passed, but everyone aboard knew the war was far from over. Danger still lurked in the shadows, and the refugees remained cautious. Inside the cabin, Lyra sat holding her baby, her body tense but her mind calmer than it had been in days. The infant slept soundly in her arms, unaware of the perils he had survived. His tiny chest rose and fell with gentle rhythm, and the soft glow from the ship's control panels reflected in his delicate features. Captain Elias Kane leaned against the console nearby, surveying the cabin. He had kept watch for hours, guiding the ship through the wreckage, keeping the baby safe, and teaching the refugees how to survive in a hostile battlefield. Fatigue tugged at his muscles, but his mind remained sharp, always planning the next move, always protecting life. The other refugees, once filled with fear and doubt, now looked at him differently. To them, he was no longer just a soldier or a guide. He was a guardian, a human who had risked everything for them, not out of duty. Alone, but out of compassion. Veyron, the tall alien who had once argued fiercely about silencing the baby, approached cautiously. "I do not understand," he said quietly, almost in awe. "Your people, your humans, you fight with weapons, yes. But also, you fight with your hearts. You fight for life itself." Elias shook his head slightly. "It's not unique to humans. It's what anyone would do if they believe life is worth protecting. But humans have a habit of never giving up, even when all hope seems lost." Lyra looked at the soldier with gratitude. "You've shown us that courage isn't just about fighting, it's about protecting, thinking, and caring. My child, he is alive because of you, because of humans." The baby stirred and opened, his eyes, tiny and curious, looking up at Elias with soft recognition. Elias smiled, reaching out a hand that the infant instinctively reached for. The connection was small, silent, but profound, a moment of understanding between life saved and life savior. Outside, the distant hum of enemy ships could be heard faintly through the ship's sensors. The larger fleet was still out there, patrolling the debris field, but it was not aware of their exact position. The humans' clever use of the baby's cry as a decoy had bought them precious time. Elias turned to the refugees. "We've survived because we worked together, not because we were stronger or faster or better armed. We survived because we adapted and because we protected the most vulnerable. That's why we're still here." Veyron nodded slowly, absorbing the lesson. "Your courage. It changes everything. I have never seen anything like this." The other refugees murmured agreement, their faces softening with respect and newfound trust. Fear still lingered, but it no longer ruled their hearts. Instead, hope had begun to take its place. The journey through the wreckage was slow, and Elias knew they would need to move carefully for days. Supplies were low, the ship was fragile, and the enemy could return at any moment. But he had taught them enough to survive, at least for now. That night, while most of the refugees tried to rest, Elias remained awake at the console. He monitored the sensors, checking for any sign of enemy movement. Occasionally, the baby stirred and let out a small cry, but it no longer caused panic. Instead, it was a reminder of life, of hope, and of the resilience of those aboard. Lyra approached him quietly. "Elias," she said softly, "do you ever rest?" He shook his head with a faint smile. "Not until everyone is safe. Not until every life I can protect is out of danger." She looked at him with admiration and a touch of awe. "You've saved more than just my child. You've saved us all. And you've changed how we see humans. You've shown us something we never believed possible." Elias glanced at the sleeping baby and then back at the refugees. Sometimes it takes a small life to remind everyone what's worth fighting for. Today it was this child. Tomorrow it could be someone else. That's why we do what we do. Outside, the stars twinkled coldly, indifferent to the battles and dangers below. But inside the cabin, warmth had returned. Fear had not vanished completely, but it had been replaced with a quiet strength. The refugees understood that survival wasn't just about hiding or running. It was about courage, care, and quick thinking. Days passed. The ship continued to drift through the debris field, carefully navigating around wreckage, avoiding patrols, and using clever tactics to remain hidden. Elias taught the refugees to monitor sensors, to manage power, and to think creatively about safety. Each day their confidence grew, and so did their trust in him. The baby, once a symbol of vulnerability, had become a symbol of life worth protecting. Every time he cried, it reminded them that they were not just surviving. They were fighting for something greater than themselves. Finally, the ship reached a relatively safe zone, deeper in the debris, far from the enemy patrols. The refugees gathered together, their faces relaxed, their bodies finally at ease. Lyra held her baby, tears of relief running down her cheeks. "You did it," she whispered to Elias. "You kept us alive. You kept hope alive." Elias shook his head with humility. "We did it. Together. This child, he reminded us what matters most. Protecting life, protecting hope, that is what humans do best. But every one of you played a role. Courage isn't just mine. It belongs to all of us. Varen, once skeptical and doubtful, stepped forward. He bowed his head slightly, a gesture of respect among his people. I understand now. Humans are not only fighters. You are guardians, protectors. You inspire us to see life differently. You have changed everything. The refugees murmured in agreement. The baby stirred, cooing softly, and the room seemed to brighten with the sound. It was a small, simple noise, yet it carried a powerful meaning. Life persisted, hope persisted, and humans had reminded them why. Elias smiled, watching the child. "Remember this," he said softly. "Every life is worth protecting. Courage can come in many forms, sometimes from a soldier, sometimes from a child, sometimes from the choices we make every day. Never forget that." The refugees nodded, their eyes shining with understanding. The war around them was still raging, but their hearts had changed. They now carried hope alongside fear, courage alongside caution. They had seen what humans could do, not just with strength but with compassion, intelligence, and a refusal to give up. As the ship moved forward, leaving the most dangerous areas behind, Lyra held her baby close, whispering to him softly, "You are alive, little one, and because of you we are alive too. Remember this day, for it will guide you in the days to come." Elias watched them, feeling a quiet satisfaction. The battle was not over, and danger would return. But for now, life had won a small victory. A human had chosen to protect, to lead, and to inspire, and in doing so he had changed the lives of many forever. The baby's eyes opened wide, gazing up at Elias. A small smile seemed to form on the child's face, and in that instant, the soldier knew that his choice to step forward, to act with courage, had made a lasting difference. Sometimes it took just one act of care, one brave decision, to change everything. And as the small ship drifted into the quiet darkness, the refugees understood something simple yet profound. Humans were different. Not because of their weapons, not because of their strength, but because of their hearts. In that quiet cabin among the survivors, with a baby's soft coos filling the air, everything had truly changed. Hope had returned. Courage had returned. And the story of life, protected against all odds, had begun anew.